Namaskar viewers, hello and welcome to Sansad TV. I am Tina Jha. You're watching Perspective. Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman has called upon the fintech industry to take advantage of specific opportunities in green finance and play its part in building a sustainable financial environment. Speaking at the Global Fintech Fest, she asked fintech players to break the distance barrier and have more engagements with the government and its agencies to enhance trust. She said everyone in the government, whether the Prime Minister, ministers, or in fact also the think tank Niti Aayog, is constantly available for engagement, discussions and exchange of ideas. Speaking at the same event, RBI Governor Shaktikanta expressed commitment to supporting innovation for fintech companies, but not at the cost of consumer interest. India today is among the fastest growing fintech markets in the world, with a market size of $31 billion in the year 2021. And this is expected to reach $1 trillion by 2030. So the next wave in the fintech sector, their role in sustainable finance and innovation opportunities, plus the challenges to green finance. These are some aspects that we will get perspectives on from eminent panelists joining us on the program. Pleased to welcome with us in the studio Mr. Shubhamoy Bhattacharjee, Consulting Editor at the Business Standard. Thank you, sir, for your time. And joining us virtually is Mr. Anand Singh Bhal. He's former Principal Economic Advisor, Government of India, and Ms. Nehal Mota, co-founder, Finovate. Thank you to both my guests for joining us virtually on the program as well. Mr. Bhattacharjee, to begin with, give us and our viewers a sense and overview of what exactly is green finance, which are the areas that fall under its umbrella.
Yeah, it's something that we are very excited about. Let's see why the fintech sector matters so much. In 1991, when India started off on liberalization, we talked about the telecom revolution. And very soon, people forgot the landline and everybody was speaking on the mobile. And nobody even remembers the landline. It's just a relic of the past. Such a huge generation change that happened with telecom. The same thing in another way is happening with the fintech. Banks, till recently, were known as the places from where people took loans. The fintech world that has come into India, and as you rightly pointed out, it's expanding at a massive pace, is actually changing the concept of banks for a vast percentage of our population. They are the face of banking. So you can imagine the scale at which this thing is happening. And when we say all that, the interesting thing is when we link it with what, for instance, the finance minister was talking today about green finance, is that fintechs typically lend for activities which are climate positive. Why do I say it? Because fintechs typically don't lend for a big corporate. They lend to small traders, they lend to the households, they lend to the rural areas. Now, all of these people typically, they are doing productive activities. Somebody is running a shop, somebody is running a service agency, somebody is doing repairs. All of these are sustainable activities. They need to be sustainable because otherwise the people will not be able to run their business. Now, in that case, the fintech is actually doing something which is positive. So something which, the rest of the world will actually be taking an effort to turn the world towards, financing which is climate positive. Here, the fintechs are naturally, because of the position, have a very strong, what I might call, handshake with the climate positive activity. So in that context, it makes sense that if their financing can come from green finance sources. Why? Because it's cheaper. Lots of companies across the world are turning towards green finance, that is what we want to give, that is what we are willing to shave off a few basis points to give a cheaper loan. So it's a win-win situation. The fintech companies get loans, and if they can project their climate positive activities, they get loans at cheaper rate. They in turn serve the population better. So overall, there's enormous possibility. And as I said, it's expanding. It's expanding very fast. It's just, we are just simply, even in spite of all the things that have happened, we are just simply looking at the first building blocks.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Ms. Nehal, how does the fintech sector look at the opportunities in green financing? Of course, the government has cited several possibilities, several advantages. But first, help us and our viewers understand the kind of opportunities that, fintech sector sees in green financing. How similar or how different is it from CSR?
Like rightly discussed till now, that fintech plays a major role. Now, the brick and mortar banks, I take the largest state bank from 1950s to now, it probably has about 50 crore people as its customers. When I look at the private banks, they came in and that's where they took away a lot of market share from PSU. From 1992 till date, HDFC Bank probably right now has reached about, say, 10 crore customers. And you have a fintech player like Paytm, which is already at a 10 crore plus customer base. And that is in less than 10 years. So you can see the amount of reach to every household which fintech has achieved in the last 10 years. And like we were rightly discussing, that the money reaching the rural India in form of short loans is what fintech will make a very big difference. So it's not only about lending to large organizations which banks generally cater to, it's actually lending to the small traders, the marginal farmers who work in the rural India. And it is very important for our rural India to grow, the small traders to grow, so that they have access to capital and they can grow. And the whole burden on the bigger cities go down, which really helps in turn, in climate, in, overall pollution. And that is where I think fintech plays a major role in actually taking that finance to the last mile of person very sooner.
Mr. Bal, what is your perspective, sir? The Prime Minister keeps reiterating that India is moving forward with a vision of green growth. So as we head towards becoming a green economy, that is something that we, set out to achieve the target. Where do you see the concept of green financing setting in, the role of the fintech sector, particularly in unlocking, upholding green finance?
Let me take a slightly larger macro picture. So to attain the sort of sustainable development goals of 2030, there's a shortage of funds globally and for India also. And this is where the fintech sector can come in. It can do a lot of things. It can reduce the sort of information asymmetry between lenders and borrowers. It can provide that last mile connectivity. It can use technology like blockchain and artificial intelligence to do sort of expedite that entire loan giving process and give it to the deserving candidates. And there's a lot of international work being done by fintech companies. So international best practices. There's a Swedish firm which has sort of woven in their investment metrics, the climate change and the sustainability, adaptability thing. So besides just sheer lending to the small people, the fintech sector with its very nimble and agile technology and using, as I said, blockchains and AI, they can also help reduce this big asymmetry, as we call in economics, that lack of information between the sort of people giving loans and the people receiving loans. As very rightly pointed out, the financial fintech sector is very good to provide loans to the small and medium enterprises who don't have, and the small farmers, etc., who don't have access to the larger banks. So that's one great role they're doing. And here I also would like to say that, that the kind of information the fintech companies can gather, they'll help in one very important thing, which is called the greenwashing of loans. A lot of companies will say they're going green and they're investing in green activities, whereas on the ground they are not. Now, fintech companies with their very agile technologies and all can very strongly help in this, preventing this false claims of green investment and greenwashing, as we say. And the government of India has set up various heads under which it will help fintech industry. There's a climate change financial unit in Ministry of Finance also, which is there. And as you said, this dialogue between industry and the ministry, that's an open door totally. Having been in the government, we see it happening day in and day out. The ministers, the senior bureaucrats, the junior bureaucrats, all available, and the private sector is very happy, and they walk in at any time and they discuss their things, and stakeholder consultations are had. So that's one good thing. India is going towards a mature economy with very intense consultations, and it's leading to good results. Yeah.
But Mr. Bhattacharjee, the fact that it's a win-win situation for the fintech sector, why did the finance minister have to reiterate the aspect about mistrust? Are there concerns that, on regulation, which have, become the talk of the town? something that the RBI governor has also pointed out. Is it something that the finance minister was wanting to pacify when she said that the doors are open for the industry and the government to, have more engagements, have more dialogue?
So, as they say, with great power comes great responsibility. Essentially, when companies like Ms. Nehal Mota's company and others who move on to tap sectors, which Dr. Bal was pointing out, these people who have not been exposed to the financial sector properly, literacy is something that they're also doing. They're also giving out loans at the same time. So they're educating a first generation of customers and expanding very fast. She rightly talked about Paytm and other examples which have massively expanded. Now, obviously, their hand-holding is coming through these companies. So these companies, that's why I'm saying that they have the responsibility to ensure that that first step looks nice to them, that they feel that, yes, from now I can go on. Remember, India has had a very bad history, and obviously, as a poor country with low per capita income for many decades, money lenders, role of people who lend have never been seen as very positively. Today, there's this new generation of entrepreneurs going in, willing to change that entire picture. So obviously, it's necessary that they need to, while they will obviously need to build up their profits, they need to wait a bit. They need to cultivate the customers, give them time to understand what it means, to be a bit generous. And I think those are the sort of stuff that needs to come in. I can understand, all of them have financial pressures, they have their quarterly books to complete. But that's where I suppose we need, that essentially that reducing of that mistrust is very essential, so that this industry, which is obviously going to be very fastly expanding, gets its place, but pulls the people along. So, yeah.
Okay, Ms. Nehal, what's your opinion on this? When we talk about, more engagements, more dialogues, more exchange of ideas between the government and the industry, what really are the stumbling roadblocks? So we've spoken about the huge potential, about the significant progress that this relatively new trend of green financing has made. But when it comes to the challenges, what are some of the challenges that you can cite?
Okay, so like we said, that fintech has a reach which the traditional sector will take a lot of time to reach. The traditional sector had its own, you needed a capital, you needed assets to be able to borrow money and invest in your business, which was too difficult for, small-time business people and even farmers. So what fintech should do is that move away from asset financing, or, you need to produce a certain income tax return, or, have like this checklist. Only then you qualify to get that kind of capital. So cash flows is a reality. So somewhere, if fintechs engage more with the government as well as with the consumer to understand that for smaller players, it may not be necessary that they have the kind of assets or they have the kind of income tax returns to be able to access capital. If we can look at cash flows very differently and look at engaging with the government where we, start lending against a very robust cash flow, I think that will really start building in a lot of trust, and even people will come forward, to show what is the kind of cash flows which they have. They may not necessarily at this point of time have any assets or great returns to prove themselves, but cash flow is a reality. And if we can start engaging with the industry, with the government, with the consumer on this, and come up with innovative products which really take down this whole paperwork, required for the capital to be available, to the masses.
Absolutely. Mr. Bal, financial support to transition is of course a major challenge for countries like India, for other developing economies as well. For countries where this trend has picked up and where there's been rapid progress, are there some of the best practices that we can adopt?
Yeah, so certainly this fintech sector is growing globally, and the best practices in the various countries, of course, need to be adopted. Like I was giving an example of a Swedish fund, which has embedded these climate concerns in their investment metric, and that's how providing green finance. I'm sure there are a lot of other good practices also. Mm-hmm. And one caveat I would like to leave here is, that microfinance sector, which suddenly grew very suddenly, but without the proper regulation, it led to some harmful effects. So that is why, as you said initially, some kind of regulation light, light sort of principled based on first principles regulation is required. We don't need an intense monitoring by the government. No way. That will kill the sector. But this financial sector with sort of gullible people, or maybe small firms and manufacturers on the other side, certainly need to be regulated. And here also there are practices, good practices for regulation across the world, and we need to copy from there. So we need to copy internationally from best regulation practices, the best technological adoption being done by them, and the various processes and instruments which the other countries are also using. India itself is a leader in the fintech. There's no denying it. We have to take great pride in the fact that our UPI is doing wonderfully and our fintech company is doing well. But there's always the finance being such a as they say, finance being such a delicate matter. It has to be regulated. If regulated might be a strong term, the regulation is the term. It has to be regulated with a light touch, but it has to be under supervision. Unless it can sort of snowball into a crisis at a very short notice.
Absolutely,
so those
Mr.
are the things I would
so
say we need to
is that
learn
what the
from
RBI?
ourselves.
Yes. Is that what the RBI has also been wanting to say when it talks about regulation? The fact that this sector has grown exponentially, is poised to grow. There will be new markets with the emerging players still there. So in order to ensure that all of these players, they are following the traffic rules effectively, and for that regulation is the best way forward?
Yeah, traffic rules is a good word. Essentially, you realize green finance, when you say green, is part of three things: environment, social, governance. It's the ESG fund. Now, no funding which will be coming along will feel nice if it's green, but it's cutthroat. It's actually creating problems. So that's why the RBI is actually putting in a word of caution that, all of these are linked. Similarly, today, the SEBI chairman, Madhavi Puribuch, she also made the point that we like it when you innovate. She was studying the fintech festival that was on, where in fact all of the three of them, the RBI chairperson, SEBI chairman, and the finance minister spoke. We like it when you are innovating, but we don't like it when you try to make it difficult for customers to withdraw. We like you when you can make them easily enter. Now, so these are very related points that customers have to come in. Green will come, and green will mean that the rules have to be transparent. It has to be fair, as you talked about the traffic rules, that essentially it has to be fair to the poorest person. And that means a lot of responsibility, again, coming along to that point. So essentially, making the innovations possible, but since you are lending, as Dr. Bal pointed out, lending means that you have to be careful how you lend. What are the rules you make for it? And are those rules are transparently followed? Have they been explained to the people who are taking out those loans? Those are important caveats which needs to be worked on, which is why the caution coming from both the RBI governor as well as the
Absolutely.
SEBI
So the bottom line is innovation is important. We promote innovation, but at the same time, consumer interest is paramount. Ms. Nehal, coming back to you to understand, the emerging competition with the emergence of new players, the growing popularity of their innovative products, how difficult does it make for the players who are already there? And, how do they ensure that they prevail, especially with these newer trends for which the government has been also pitching hard? How does it, how do the older players ensure that they prevail in the market alongside the new innovative products?
When you're new and small and lean, it's too easy for you to adapt yourself to future changes. But if I were to look at the current ecosystem of financial services, and particularly banks, I think going forward, they should really look at lending to companies, which understand what green means. Okay, so whether they have projects which are environmentally sustaining, what kind of transportation means are they using to deliver their product to the end consumer? Are they using green energy? And are they eventually carbon neutral? So at least the existing banks can, maybe for the new funds which they are lending, bring in a kind of, checks and balances to look at companies which are adapting to this whole change towards green. So that is one very big move. And the wealth tech platforms like us, we can actually bring in about an awareness amongst the investors to pick up companies which are doing a lot of work on ESG. So we create funds or we create an investing style which attracts a lot of money, not only from the Indian investors, but also from the foreign institutions in the companies which are ESG compliant or which are moving towards ESG. So there is a lot which not only the new players, but also the existing ecosystem in the financial services can do to actually nudge the companies which are borrowing to start adopting green in a very big way, in the way they handle their waste, the way they transport their goods, in the way their projects are environmentally sustaining, what kind of energy do they use in manufacturing that project. So when the lender actually starts questioning the companies, and that's where they will start changing more faster. So I think banks should come up with a special fund which is only available for companies which are ESG friendly and which believe in growth with sustainability.
Absolutely. So that having been said, Mr. Pal, I'll have to begin taking concluding remarks, the last 5 minutes left. Sustainable change is the way ahead. And this is the road that is going to lead us to 2070, by which we have to achieve this ambitious target that the Prime Minister has set at Glasgow. He announced last year. What do you think is the way ahead? Because if this is the future, we have to strengthen the ecosystem. We've just begun taking nascent steps. We have to now make the ecosystem much stronger, much more enabling for the newer players to adapt.
So I agree. This India's commitment towards this zero emission by 2070 is very strong. And we can see it by the way renewable energy is being given a lot of importance. The coal power plants are being put on the back burner, and hydroelectric and solar is being given. On the automobile sector, electronic vehicles and batteries, we are doing well. And as part of the production linked incentive also, we're going in for these semiconductors and these batteries and all, which will eventually lead to a more less carbon intensive GDP growth. So India's commitment is strong. We are on the right path. And, given the resilience of our economy, you see one big thing which happened in Corona, the global value chains were totally made, tweaked. No more is pure efficiency the high ground of globalization. No, now the global value chains in pharmaceuticals and various products now have to rely more on resilience and strength.
Yes.
And and all this is finally going to lead to India being a more sustainable economy. And of course, with our emphasis on energy being right at the top of our radar, I think we are moving on the right target, and the fintech sector is really going to enable us to achieve our goals.
Absolutely, and that's what the finance minister has also said, that with the manner in which the fintech sector is growing, it holds, in fact, is going to play a huge role when it comes to this sustainable change. Mr. Bhattacharjee, the chief economic advisor says the fintech sector is expected to reach $1 trillion by 2030. How do you look at the next wave of fintech transition in India?
The fintech revolution is India's revolution in the world. And we have really not done any major financial revolution before this. This is something that we have practically created based on the Aadhaar, the India stack. The Aadhaar then built up on the UPI. It's a massive thing that India has created. So, as you said, the numbers are massive, but which also means that there's a lot of attention being paid onto what's happening globally in India. India, this is the biggest experiment that's going along in the financial sector globally through the fintech. So, getting it right, not letting adverse news come up is very important. And that is why we are today talking about, the green finance, ensuring its ESG, ensuring that the right messages, the right methods are adopted, innovators get rewarded, but the customers also feel satisfied. Absolutely. That that's happening. So there are lots of chains, there are lots of links in this chain. And to ensure that these things all happen, it's a complex thing, because no one person, no one regulator can control it. RBI will be doing a lot of it. SEBI will be looking a lot of it. But also depends on how the companies are, stepping out. So that is where the challenge is. It's very exciting. It's fantastic. But again, as I said, it's something on which there's no method or there's no sort of model for us to copy. We are learning as we go along. And that's what makes it so exciting. Absolutely.
We've had our own share of challenges, but pandemic has taught us to deal with it in our own way. And perhaps that is what has worked so well. It has made us more resilient. And that is what is now propelling us to move beyond to greater heights. So that having been said, I'll have to wind up the program. Thank you to all my guests for joining me on the program today and sharing your thoughts with us and our viewers. Absolute pleasure to have all three of you on this edition of Perspective. So that's it from us on the program today, viewers. Thank you for your time as well. I'll see you same time tomorrow now. Until then, you take good care of yourselves and keep watching Sansad TV.